basic aspects of the game of basketball. So please do forgive me if I get a little scatterbrained. There might be a few things that I missed. But this isn't the most in-depth guide. This is just trying to familiarize you with the more common terminology and things that, things that are just what you need to know. So, obviously, the first aspect of basketball is how do you win the game? Well, you score more points than your opponent, of course, but to do that, you are given 4 quarters. Designate that there. You get 4 quarters that are 12 minutes long in American college basketball. If you choose to watch that instead, you are given 2 halves of 20 minutes. And there are slight variations in different leagues around the world. I think EuroLeague is a little bit different when it comes to, the actual playtime. And I think high school is also a little different, but that's not what we're focusing on. So that is the timing rules. Another thing to keep in mind in terms of timing is a 24-second 24-second shot clock. So you get a 24-second shot clock, and that simply means for every time you possess the ball, you have 24 seconds to take the ball and put it in the basket, or at least attempt to put it in the basket, because of course, if you miss and the opposing team gets it, if they catch the ball off the miss, that is a rebound, that is a new possession. The shot clock will reset. There are some exceptions to turnovers and fouls and how the shot clock works, but the most fundamental aspect to understand is that the shot clock resets on turnover. So that's all that really matters. Another thing to keep in mind is the 8-second violation. So the 8-second violation. So when you hear the announcers say that someone has committed an 8-second violation, that means that from the inbound, right? So someone comes in, scores, the opposing team then gets the ball. They have to inbound the ball into the field of play. That will start the shot clock. So on the inbound, player goes here, inbounds the ball to a guy here. That player then has 8 seconds to move from here across the midfield line, and that is known as the back court, is where the inbound happens. The front court is where the ball is going. So if you hear the term back court and front court, that is what that means. It depends on where the ball is moving. So if the ball is moving this way, as in this example here, back court, front court, that's all you need to know about that. It's just where the ball is going that determines what is and isn't the front court or the back court. That's what that means. So there is also a 3-second violation. So 3 seconds. And a 3-second violation just means that you were in the paint for 3 seconds, essentially, which you can't do. So an offensive player and a defensive player, if they are sitting in the paint for 3 seconds, will be called for a 3-second violation. That is also a turnover, which resets the shot clock. So that's all of that. Now we can get into the actual scoring itself. As you can see, I have designated the different points that you can score. There's a 1 point, which is right here in the center. This is a free throw. Of course, to shoot a free throw, you need to be fouled. And to be fouled, most commonly, you're going to see a shooting foul. There are also blocking fouls and team fouls and player fouls. There's a lot when it comes to fouling, but not all of them result in free throws. So we're not going to go like super in-depth into fouls. It's just the most common foul that you are going to see is a shooting foul. It happens pretty much every drive. It just depends on who the refs are and who wants to call it. But a shooting foul is just any time that a defensive player is interfering with an offensive player's shot. Most commonly, what you'll see is a player might hook underneath the shoulder, or a player might slap the wrist of a player that's going for a shot, which is illegal. You can't hit the hand or the wrist. So if someone is going up for a block and they hit the wrist of the opposing player, that will be called a shooting foul. And then, depending on how many fouls have been committed, that will determine the free throw, if it happens or not. What you'll also hear, so as we're talking about fouls real quick, if you foul 6 times, if you get 6 fouls, you are fouled out, and you are no longer eligible to play that game. If you foul out too many times, at least in the NBA, if you foul out too many times, you will be assessed with a technical, and if you get too many technicals, you will essentially be fined, and you can't play for a game. And again, there's a lot of nuance when it comes to technical fouls that I'm not really going to get into for this video, but if you get two techs, if you get 2 technical fouls in a game, you will be kicked out. You will be eliminated. If you get 2 flagrant fouls, so 2 flagrant fouls, you will also be kicked out, depending on the severity. I think there is like some rulings where if you commit like a flagrant foul and the refs determine it's bad enough, you'll just get disqualified immediately. But yeah, again, when it comes to fouling, there's a whole lot of stuff there. Flagrant is just if you throw punches, right? Like, flagrant is what Draymond Green does. So a lot of different rules there when it comes to fouling. But if you get 2 techs, if you get 2 technical fouls, if you get 2 flagrant fouls, you'll be disqualified. If you get too many flagrants or too many techs, the NBA comes down and punishes you. If you foul out too much, the NBA comes down and punishes you. But you very rarely see that. Like, it is super rare for a guy to foul out for even 2 games in a row, which I think is also why the technical and flagrant rules exist. So that is fouling. Next, we have the 2-point, and the 2-point is anything inside of this giant arch here. Anything inside of that is 2 points. A lot of times you'll hear this, like this little area here, right? This sort of quarter circle. A lot of this will be called the mid-range. That's 2 points. Everything outside the circle is 3 points, so this is the 3-point line here. Now, you can see I've designated some different names here on the court. When you watch a guy score, you'll often hear the announcers say, he scored from the corner or whatever. So that's just different areas of the court. So in here, right, from the free throw line to the back line here, this typically in most basketball courts, this area is painted a different color. That's why it's called the paint. You'll also hear it called the post or the restricted area, or there are other names for it that you will hear, but very commonly. For example, if the announcer comes on and he says, the LA Clippers have outscored the Utah Jazz 17-6 in the paint in the first quarter, that is what they're referring to. They're referring to this area specifically. And it's actually a very important aspect of the game to score in the paint, especially nowadays. You want to get a lot of points from the paint if you can. So that's the point. Or the paint, sorry. Up here, this is the corner, this little, like, sort of rectangle area up here. This is the corner. Whenever you hear someone say a corner 3, that means they're shooting from this spot here. There's, obviously a corner on both sides. this right here is the corner post on the inside here. Um, it works essentially the same. It's just the side of the basket basically is the corner. So from this sort of line here to the basket, that's the corner. Another thing you're going to hear a lot, and I mean a lot, especially nowadays, is top of the key. Now, the top of the key just refers to this circle here, the free throw circle. If the player is in this specific area here, near the top of this circle, this is the top of the key right here. So that's, when you hear that, that's what you're hearing. And then the wing is another thing that you're going to hear a lot, and we'll talk about when we move over to this section. This is the wing here, so visualize it basically. If you take the free throw line and you just extend it out visually, like in your head, and go down, that is the wing area. So corner, wing, paint, corner post, and the top of the key. Those are very, very common that you hear nowadays. So that's the on-the-court terminology. Now let's move over to this side where we're going to talk about player terminology. So we're going to start with the one. When you hear someone say, Jalen Brunson is playing the one tonight, that means they are playing point guard. Now, the point guard is essentially, a lot of the time you can think of it as like the quarterback of basketball, though not nearly as highly paid. But the point guard is the guy that is going to be inbound, catching the inbounds, right? Moving the ball up the court. He's going to be looking to play make. He's going to be looking to facilitate and pass the ball a lot. When you hear someone say true point guard, they're basically just referring to a guy that doesn't score but does all the other stuff, right? So, like, Tyrese Halliburton is, I think, the closest that people talk about nowadays, is just a guy that loves to move the ball around, runs the offense super well, that kind of thing. So that is a true point guard. It's just a guy that is very self-sacrificial, very unselfish. It's a guy that's going to help the team play. He's going to be designing a lot of plays. He's going to be doing a lot of the communicating, telling people where to go, that kind of thing. So that is the point guard. Our next two, the 2 position, the shooting guard, and the 3 position, the small forward. A lot of these guys nowadays are referred to as something called a 3-and-D player. So these are also sometimes referred to as wings. So a 3-and-D wing you're going to hear all the time nowadays, and that is essentially the shooting guard and the small forward. Most commonly, more than anything, these are the 2 guys they're referring to when they say 3-and-D wing, and that is just a guy that plays a lot of defense and shoots a lot of threes. They don't really move into the mid-range. Shooting guards can, right? More often than the small forward, the shooting guard is going to be playing up this way, but these 2 positions are very similar to each other. They are very versatile, right, in the way that you use them. A lot of the times these are like guys that are anywhere from 6'5 to 6'10, 6'11, something like that. Not quite big enough to be a forward or a center, but these are just, there are a lot of different archetypes for the wing player. You have like your shooting guard types that are more down and in, that like to move into the paint and shoot a lot of layups, that kind of thing. And then you have, for example, a guy like Jaden McDaniels, or Jalen Williams on the OKC Thunder. That's like a small forward that is more of a catch and shoot kind of guy from the wing. Again, these 2 positions are the ones that are switching and evolving in real time. We see it a lot now. So these are the 3-and-D wings. that you're going to hear about a lot. But again, it's very fluid. So small forward and shooting guard, 3-and-D wing is the most common aspect for both of these guys. But the small forward can also be used like a power forward if they want. A guy, I think LeBron actually plays small forward, if I remember correctly. Like, typically, at least nowadays, I believe he's playing the small forward 3 spot, and then a guy like Anthony Edwards, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, let me think. Like, a lot of the big name guys right now are like shooting guard. I think Luka is also a shooting guard, if I remember correctly. So there's a lot of versatility in these two positions, but these are like really, really big time scorers. They do just a lot of different things in that regard, but they're very similar nowadays. It's just a matter of what other skills do they have. Like a shooting guard, sometimes you'll hear a combo guard. So a combo guard just means basically the opposite of a true point guard, as a plane very rudely flies overhead. I live next to an airport, so I apologize about that. It is 3 o'clock in the morning as I record this. I don't know why that's happening, but as I was saying, a combo guard is essentially the point guard and the shooting guard, and it's a lot of what point guard has become. Is, they'll do the facilitating, they'll walk up the floor, and they'll play make and that kind of stuff. But they're also taking a lot of shots, which is, not typically what this guy does anymore. So these 3 positions are really like this hedge, right? Like this weird conglomerate between these 3 positions. They're kind of similar, but also kind of not, because in reality, in today's NBA, it's a lot of positionless basketball. I'll be completely honest. Like, the only thing that really separates right now these 3 players is like the alternative skill set. Like, if you're more defensive, you're probably playing small forward. If you're sort of like on the smaller side, if you're like 6'4", 6'5", you're probably a shooting guard. If you're like 6'7", 6'8", you're probably a small forward. If you're like 6'1", you're point guard. You're always going to be point guard. If you're on the smaller side, you're always going to be point guard. But there really is, like, especially between these 3 positions, this weird hegemony that's showing up in today's NBA. The only real players that don't quite fit that mold are the 4 and the 5. The 4 is the power forward. The power forward is just the biggest guy on your team that can dunk, right? Basically, like, again, these 2 play kind of similarly. The power forward is just going to be outside of the paint more often. The center is always going to be like under the basket, contesting shots, that kind of thing. Like Rudy Gobert, Victor Wembanyama, Yusuf Nurkic, basically any white guy from the Balkans is going to be just a ridiculous center. If their name ends in itch, they're probably a center, like Nikola Jokic, Vucevic, however you say that guy's name. I think he's on the Bulls now, I don't remember, but like those guys, the big guys that are just sitting under the rim, being a pest, that's the center, the power forward. Jokic also plays a lot of power forward. Is just the guy that bully balls you, like day in, day out, is the bully ball. And power forward is my favorite position, by the way. I love power forwards because it's the biggest dude. They're fast. They run down the court and they just, they box out. They do all that stuff. They will dunk on you. They will, all that kind of thing. Like, the power forward is my favorite position by far. These guys are usually like 6'10", the center, really. Like, the center is always going to be your tallest player. It's kind of like the opposite of point guard, where it's like this dude's just the biggest guy on the field. Um, and again, they will refer to them kind of interchangeably now between the number designation and their actual position. So, like, you know, they'll play the 1, or they'll play the 3, or they'll play the 2, and I don't actually know why it's like that, right? Like, I don't know who came up with point guard being 1, or the 3, or the 5, whatever. But that is what they are referring to when they call by number, because, again, positionless basketball is getting more and more common, so they'll just refer to them by number instead of, guard or forward or whatever. I think some of it has to do with, like, priority in who gets the ball, right? I think that's how it works, because, like, obviously you want the point guard to have the ball pretty much any time you're not taking a shot. You want it in the point guard's hands, so they can, call plays and move people around and do all that stuff. And then, 2 and 3 is like your, as we said, the wings, and they're the ones that are shooting and all that stuff. And then the center is pretty much only getting the ball if it's like a Jokic or a Giannis or a Joel Embiid, some of these other bigs. And that's another thing I should mention. One of the terms you're going to hear a lot, especially again nowadays, is stretch. Stretch big. So a stretch big is just the biggest guy on your team that can also shoot from behind the arch. So stretch big means a guy that can stretch the defense, because not only is he, shooting layups and going into the post and scoring, but he's also capable of shooting 3-pointers. I think, like, the typical archetype that I think of when I think of a stretch big is like Karl Anthony Towns. Like, that's just the first one I think of. I think he was one of the earliest that I remember hearing the term is Karl Anthony Towns, or not really OG Anunoby, but what is that other guy that I always confuse him for? Oh god, I can't even think of his name right now. But he's moved around a lot. But stretch big just means a 4 or a 5 that can shoot 3-pointers. That's what a stretch big is. So you'll hear that a lot as well. Yeah, I don't think there's any other, like, term that you're gonna hear, right? So 3 and D wings are these guys. You've got combo guard is these two right here. A true point guard is just this guy that doesn't shoot, and then stretch big is these two guys right here. So that's about all I've got on me right now. I think I've covered most of the important stuff that you need to know if you want to start watching basketball. Again, if you enjoyed this video, maybe we can do another one in the future where we talk more nerd about offensive philosophy and why the Warriors were so effective at moving the ball as much as they did or whatnot. But I think that's everything I've got that should hopefully help you get a better understanding of basketball. And I thank you very much for watching. I hope to speak with you all again soon.